At De Beers, and prior to De Beers, he spent 15 years in investment banking at JP Morgan. He's going to talk about innovation and the role of the CFO. So let's welcome him.
Thank you, thanks Catherine, thanks Ben for that very depressing talk. I shouldn't be too critical, as Catherine said. I spent 15 years in investment banking, so somehow I'm sure this is my fault. I'm really excited to speak to all of you today about innovation, and De Beers in particular has recently attracted a bit of attention following the launch of Tracer, our blockchain platform for asset tracking of diamonds through the industry value chain. But also we launched a new laboratory-grown diamond jewellery business, Lightbox. And for a group like De Beers, whose brand is synonymous with natural diamonds, and in an industry that in the past has been seen as lacking transparency, these are relatively meaningful changes. We're a 130-year-old business as of last year, and we've been leader in our market since day one. But we recognise all around us the pace of change, just as all of you do. Whether that's new mining technology, whether that's changing consumer preferences, we've all read about millennial appetites, and now of course we're into Generation Y, innovative retail models that have been launched, and of course attraction of laboratory-grown diamonds with consumers. So we've had to think hard over a relatively short period about how we become more innovative. And that's required a significant change in culture. It's required us to empower our people to identify and develop new opportunities and new business models. And in the back of our mind, we've had all of these cautionary tales. So Steve Ballmer, when he was CEO of Microsoft, had said about Apple, there's no chance that the iPhone is going to get any significant market share. No chance. 2 or 3% is what Apple might get. And the Hilton CMO talking about Airbnb and the risk to Hilton's business. We're in hospitality, which is in some ways different than some of those newer entrants. They're into lodging. The service you get when you walk into one of our hotels, I believe, is totally different to what those lodging companies offer. And the former CEO of Nissan, car sharing is not going to be a significant part of the industry. And we've all seen how the big car companies have redirected their strategies and their capital allocation. So I don't intend to be disparaging or critical of those people and those comments, because the truth is, all of us make statements like that every day. I make statements like that every day. And the challenge for all of us is to move from awareness to acceptance, but then to action. And Patrick Doyle, I think, is an interesting case study. He was CEO of Domino's Pizza until, I think it was earlier this year. And he said about his own business that they needed to become brutally honest about their company. I like the word brutally in there. And he followed it up by saying publicly in interview after interview that their crust tasted like cardboard. Now, you'll all have your own views on whether it still tastes like cardboard or whether they've changed it. But what was interesting is in the 7 years from the beginning of 2010, Domino's generated a better return than Netflix, Amazon, and Apple. So there's something in there about being brutally honest. There's something in there about recognizing the changes that are coming and really, as I said earlier, moving into action. So it's against this backdrop that as CFO of the De Beers Group, I've had to think about how we manage the core of our business and continue to deliver returns to our shareholders while at the same time disrupting our own business, like through initiatives such as our blockchain initiative or through launching a laboratory-grown diamond business, so that we have a sustainable future. And what I'm excited to do today is to just share with you some of my observations. They're informed by others who've thought far more deeply about these topics than I have. So let me start with a little bit about De Beers. We're best known for our marketing slogan from the 1940s, "A diamond is forever." And our group operates across the diamond value chain. So exploration and mining. We mine in large open pits right the way through to marine mining in the Atlantic 1 shelf. We go from Arctic conditions of minus 40 to 50 degrees up to plus 40 or 45 degrees in the Kalahari. And we sort and sell our rough diamonds in 14,000 categories. Our group spans through to consumer marketing. Many of you may have seen the adverts if you've travelled. There are not so many of them in the UK. And we sell polished diamonds as well as the rough, and then of course jewellery. We have a significant technology business which supports all of this activity. So our mining activity through the development of new mining methods, and you can see why that's important when you get a sense of how challenging it is to mine a diamond. In order to extract from the ground 1 gram of diamond, 1 gram, and of course you've no idea what the value of that gram is. It could be heavily included, it could be incredibly valuable, because it could be a pink or a blue, but it's 1 gram. We have to move 35 tons of earth. That's a huge operation. We're also heavily investing in data and image capture and the automated sorting of our rough stones and in the grading and inscription of our rough diamonds. We're in over 30 countries, we have over 20,000 employees, and we have over $6 billion in revenue. And I'll come back to talk a little bit about where we see the opportunity for innovation across our pipeline. But first, how do I think about disruption? How do we address it in our business? Well, technology has got the ability to enhance our operating models, how we conduct our business, and that allows us to deliver meaningful cost savings. And a lot of us in this room have been, certainly over the last few years, quite focused on that. But it's also got the potential to entirely disrupt what we do, which forces us then to question our purpose. Why do we exist? What do we do? So often, what's pushing us to change is not focused on necessarily how we do things, but actually that more fundamental question of what is it that we do. We will hear, I'm sure, lots over the course of the next couple of days about a number of well-recognised global trends. So we've all heard about work being replaced by automation, but interestingly, not always in the way you might think. I was in Silicon Valley earlier this year and meeting with a variety of companies, and we talked to a company that had sought to automate its warehouse. And they'd been very focused on largely cost, that we get costs down. And they had developed machines to try and pick items from shelves, replacing humans. But what they found is that the machines didn't have the dexterity to pick different shapes, different objects off different shelves at different heights. It was doable ultimately with the technology that was available, but it was difficult. So they changed tack. What they realized is what the machines could do is optimize the route around the warehouse. They could optimize which object was picked when and in what order, in order to dramatically reduce the time taken to fulfill orders. And so they ended up with what I thought was actually quite a scary vision of the future, where the machines were figuring out what to pick up where and when, and then ordering the humans to pick the items off the shelves. So as walking bags of organic material, which is I think what we are likely to be reduced to, particularly as automated intelligent analysis and preemptive decision making takes hold, we've got to think about what's our role. And I think our role is very much around creativity and having a vision, things that machines certainly just at the moment can't do. And in doing that, I think I distinguish between two concepts: the concept of management, which is delivery of a plan, and the concept of leadership, which is having ambition without a concrete plan. Which I think brings me to how I think about the purpose of finance in the role of driving innovation. So of course, we have to provide that leadership. We have to engage with people to deliver that vision. And at its core, finance is then accountable for working with the CEO, the management team, the board, to develop that strategy, but then navigating towards that desired end state as defined by the strategy through our long-term business planning and resource allocation, resource being people as much as capital. And then maintaining resilience through that planning by thinking about different scenarios. Ben's already given us a series of cautionary pointers on things that could go wrong. One likes to think that from time to time things can also go right. But we have to make sure that we're prepared for all of those outcomes whilst having a robust balance sheet. So our role, of course, is in guiding organisations through those transformational journeys. And that's critical to success. But also we have the ability to dictate the pace of change and measure success or otherwise along that path. And I think in the past, CFOs have often been seen or tasked with bringing balance to an internal debate around growth or investment by being the voice in the room that focuses on returns today, that focuses on, is my balance sheet robust enough, are we investing too much? And of course the challenge is to do both. Why can't we do both? Why can't we focus on those things and drive innovation and drive growth by adopting the appropriate capital allocation models to provide a framework for how we manage that innovation spend? So I talked a little bit earlier about some of the innovation we've seen in De Beers, and so of course there's blockchain. I'm going to come back to that in a second, talk a little bit more about that. Let me just talk a little bit about Lightbox. I'll put it on the top right. So this is a new product for us, and it's a new market for us, laboratory-grown diamonds. And we sell these lab-grown diamonds at $800 per carat, but the pricing is linear. Half a carat's $400, quarter carat's $200. Think about how that compares to natural diamonds, which are almost exponential in price as the size gets bigger. It's entirely different. We sell lab-grown diamonds at a 90% discount to natural diamonds, and actually we sell them at 25% of the price of current lab-grown diamond offerings. So we're creating a new market, but we're doing it in response to what consumers have told us. They've told us that they want fun, fashionable jewellery, and that's what we've given them, with lots of pinks and blues in that mix. Think about how much a 1 carat pink diamond will cost you. It's into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now this product doesn't have the enduring emotional and financial value in natural stone. It doesn't. It's not rare, and it's not finite. We can produce as many of them as we want. In fact, a 1 carat stone takes about 3 to 4 weeks to grow in a machine. So these products are not for forever, but they're perfect for right now, for that fashionable jewellery. And we've been described in this strategy as disrupting the disruptors. But you can imagine how brave a move that felt when we launched it, and still feels today, and how much risk I think remains in that approach for a business that generates $6 billion from actually selling natural diamonds. This business for us at inception will be in the order of about $200 million. We're also investing heavily in alternative mining, opening up new deposits. I talked earlier about having to move 35 million tonnes of rock to find 1 gram of diamond. So you can see that the space is ripe for innovation to help reduce those costs. And actually today we will close the acquisition of TSX-listed Peregrine diamonds at a cost of around $100 million to help us on that journey. And the real focus for us is on reducing the footprint of our mines to allow us to take deposits that was previously sub-economic and make them economic. And then let's talk about digital plants, the plant of the future. We've started to create digital twins of all of our plants, supported through predictive analytics and allowing us to undertake preventative maintenance. So that's proactively highlighting where and when we should shut down, rather than doing it just on a rolling, regular basis, which is inefficient. But beyond that, actually through the data we've collected, we've also realised that we can recognise early on issues with the feed into the plant, and we can make the necessary changes to optimise performance. So just some examples of the innovation in our business. So let me, as I said I would, just dwell for a moment on our blockchain initiative. A lot's been written and spoken about blockchain, particularly in the last few years. And Tracer, which is the name of our blockchain platform, will be the first to digitally track a diamond's journey right the way through from the mine to the consumer, mine to finger. We'll provide a single immutable record for every diamond registered on the platform, and that will underpin consumer confidence in a way that's not previously been possible, while also enhancing efficiency. The important point here is it's not a digital currency. It's not a digital currency backed by diamonds. So we've involved a number of leading diamond manufacturers, our customers, in the Tracer pilot. We've already tracked hundreds of stones, high-value stones and lower-value stones, all the way through from mine to retail. And we've signed up now Signet Jewelers, the world's largest retailer of diamond jewellery. We're still also continuing to look for other strategic partners. The idea is that this isn't actually ultimately a De Beers platform, it's an industry platform. How it works? Well, we're able to track stones across the value chain by creating a unique ID for them. But there's a technology that sits behind that to ensure that people can have confidence that the stone that is tracked is the one that we say it is. And that's because we collect over 200 data points on each stone, whether that's rough or whether that's polished, through different scanning technologies and identifying the right data points to create over 90% confidence that we're tracking the same stone all the way through. The system also integrates into industry participants' record-keeping systems. It doesn't have to create a parallel system. We're able then to consolidate that data into the immutable digital trail I talked about for each physical diamond. We also overlay through that process stone planned outcomes and images. So you think about where we start with a rough stone, and it goes through a planning process where there'll be a number of options to optimize the value of that rough through different polished outcomes. You can have a larger round or a smaller round to come out of that rough. If you have a larger round, then the other stones that will be able to be manufactured from what's left of the rough will be smaller. If you go from a round to a fancy shape, princess cut, then you may be able to maximize the yield, but the value of the princess cut might be less than the value of a round. So that planning process is critical and takes a lot of time in the value chain. Our customers will spend often as much as a month making sure they get the planning right for each stone. So being able to provide that stone or those planning files, not at the point we sell the rough, but at the point we mine the rough, takes huge amounts of time out of the overall process for them, thereby saving them significant capital. And the other piece that's been critical about this is data privacy. Essentially, our customers don't actually want us to know at what price they sell the pot. We know what price we sell the rough, but that's proprietary information for them. So we've developed technology that ensures that their data privacy is paramount in the way that the system is run. And what's the value proposition? Well, for the producers, it helps underpin confidence in the diamonds that they produce, and therefore sustains that level of consumer demand that we see today. The industry today is an $82 billion industry globally. For diamond manufacturers, they get that increased visibility I talked about earlier in the process. It also facilitates access to financing because the trust that exists around each stone that is in the blockchain allows banks to be more confident that they are financing what they think they're financing and to track those stones. For retailers, they can deliver different consumer-tailored products. Again, telling the story about where the diamond has been before it gets to their finger. You can think about uploading little videos from the woman in Botswana driving our Komatsu 930E truck, which carries 400 tons of rock, in which that diamond is buried. You can tell a story from the plant operator and what they do day to day. And then it goes through from there to Gabs. Via Gabs, it goes to India. From India in Mumbai, it goes to Surat. Surat, it's cut and polished, so we can upload kind of the journey they went on to cut and polish that stone. Then it goes to Antwerp, where it's often traded. It'll go to the US, it'll be set into jewellery, it'll end up in a Tiffany store. There's a great story you can tell around all of that, because diamonds do a lot of good in the world. In terms of the people they employ, over 10 million people are employed in the diamond industry, and the contribution they make to those people's lives and the economy. For lenders to the industry, as I talked about, it reduces significantly, hopefully eliminates fraud, particularly in instances of double financing. It also, I think, supports KYC checks. And then for regulators and associations, I think they see that increased transparency. So that's what our blockchain initiative is about. If you've got any questions, I'm happy to address them later. So I'm going to come back to what we were talking about before, the role of the CFO. How do you get a Lightbox set up? How do you get a blockchain initiative off the ground? Both of these started no more than 2 years ago. And of course it starts with people. Bringing in fresh thinking, bringing in diverse thinking, bringing in new expertise. But also creating the right structures to get the best out of that, to get unfettered thinking, while staying focused on our objectives. So all of that lends itself actually to a relatively small, integrated team with a mix of skills. People external to the organisation, people internal to the organisation, people who understand our markets and our products, alongside people who understand the technologies. What we did is we actually took top talent away from their day jobs and relocated them off campus to work on specific projects. So both the blockchain and Lightbox initiatives were born in that way. The second thing, no surprise, is data. So finance functions have long been adept at collating and analysing data, but what we've tried to do now is expand our definition of data and our reach across the organisation and pulling that together. So now it's not just financial information, it's not just operational metrics, but it's a broader suite of data. And that often can be qualitative, not just quantitative. So now we compile indices which are based on customer feedback and on market sentiment trackers, just as an example. And then partnership. Our limited resources are stretched incredibly thinly, and so we need to rely on that external expertise and sometimes external capital to help us succeed and manage multiple projects. Otherwise, we'll have all of our capital backing a single project. And we need to try and understand the value we bring. And I think the insight I garnered from the work we've done over the last 2 years was what we bring is a commercial application, often for a pre-existing technology. It's not a ready-to-go solution. It requires a lot of work done to it. But that's our proposition. We can take those technologies and we can turn them into commercial applications with business models that will drive revenue and profit. And what others bring actually is the skill to develop that technology and adapt that technology. So how do you get that synthesis right, that symbiosis right between the two partners? So where are the problems in our organisation? What do we have to navigate? Well, the first is that we've got multiple pockets of investment and it's a drain on resources. Not just capital, but again, people. There's only so much that the organisation can do. And it's a highly complex interplay of different initiatives, often with duplication of activity, definitely lack of transparency, and a lack of real tracking of successes and failures. And when you combine that with the difficulty of applying traditional models of investment analysis to these initiatives, none of which have proven business models, all of which have very high risk profiles, and mostly have incredibly difficult to quantify rewards. How do you deal with that, knowing that actually any one of these initiatives could be potentially game-changing and transformation in the outcome for our business? They just don't lend themselves to traditional measures like NPV, IRR, or payback. So in some senses, we've got to think about them differently. We think about them as small investments, frankly, let's be honest, small bets. Each one being risky with an uncertain reward. But when you take them all together, and if the process comes together, they're capable of delivering a transformational new business opportunity. So when we face that sort of uncertainty, it's easy to simply not invest unless we're deterministic in our allocation of capital, i.e. we set aside a specific pool to look at those innovation ideas. And so in our business, we've become fans of Vijay Govindarajan's 3-box model for strategy, where we actively differentiate between supporting enhancement of our current or core business and investing in altogether new businesses and opportunities. And we needed a differentiated approach for doing that, for assessing those new opportunities, for the reasons I've already talked about. But the one thing that we were clear on was those new opportunities had to be capable of being transformational to our business, so they weren't about incremental improvement, and they had to meet a tangible business need. We had to know that we were solving a problem and keep our eye on the problem, not on the solution. And you'll see also in the middle box, selectively forgetting the past, we had to let go of some closely held assumptions about our industry. Lightbox being a good example, people won't buy lab-grown diamonds for engagement rings or to commemorate the birth of their first child because they don't convey the same emotional value. Well, actually, some people did buy lab-grown diamonds to do exactly those things. And we also had to know when to stop doing certain things that weren't fulfilling their purpose. So we've, for example, in our marketing spend, stopped some forms of marketing because they just weren't sufficiently returning on the investment being made. Even though that was a form of investment that we or for marketing rather we've been engaged in for 100 years. So as we think about what goes into box 1 versus what goes into box 3, just as a bit of a guide, the investment in the new initiatives I've talked about represent in our business hundreds of millions of dollars. But we've got to put that against our spend of $160 million a year on marketing and the amount of capital we will spend extending the lives of our mining operation, which will be over $3.5 to $4 billion over the next few years. So we've tried to create the right level of balance, and it's amazing how much you can do with a few $100 million in that third box. And we've also embraced the concept of agile working for these new initiatives. We start with the explore phase down in the bottom left. So this is about taking those new ideas and trialing concepts, breaking them up into small, discrete parts of an overall journey and not trying to do it all at once. It's about collecting data and it's about evolving solutions. And as a result of doing that, we commit only very small amounts of capital targeted at achieving a particular set of outcomes. Focus being very much on collecting data, reviewing achievement of milestones, and making sure the team is focused on speed. We want them to do things quickly. It's not about coming up with a plan for a year. It's about coming up with a plan for the next 6 weeks. If they meet their objectives, if they prove their concept, or if they adapt their solution, we then release the next tranche of capital. And as I said before, we have to continually ask ourselves, are we addressing a real-world problem? Because that's how we validate the solution. It's too easy to become focused on the solution and forget about the problem and trying to persuade people that our solution is the one that they want. So a lot of this is about engaging with the user. In our case, customers that buy the rough diamonds, the consumers that buy polished jewellery. And so the mantra becomes adapt, test, validate with the users. And as you go through that journey, what we've found is that the business models and the commercial case actually come much later. You don't start with those, they come at the end. And they become clearer as we go, and often they look quite different to what we may have thought they would look like when we started. So I've become a fan in our business of the concept of an innovation fund, actually to approach that debate around how we allocate capital. And that allows us to move along in increments, as I described, proving concepts as we go, measuring specific outcomes, whether those adoption rates, feedback scores, product viability. And we also create real tangible competition within our business for that funding. So there's an element of Darwinian natural selection around which ideas are best. It does mean that our panel has to be well structured for making those decisions. And so we try and capture people from across the business, but we make sure it's not just the expo on that panel, not just the executives. Actually, we take talented people who are often 3 or 4 rungs below us in the organisation and put them on the panel and say, what do you think? Because one of the challenges in these discussions, when you look around the room and you say, Can everyone who's a millennial put their hand up? No hands go up. And so you're missing that. You're missing that insight. And I don't purport to have any of the answers on what the best approach is, but simply I've sought to share how we've approached the challenge. So, thanks for allowing me to share my thoughts. I'm going to leave you with this, which is a rather gratuitous slide of some diamonds, in the hope that I can persuade some of the less disciplined capital allocators in the room to visit our store on Bond Street and help fund our innovation pipeline going forward. Thank you very much.